But when you look at the whole picture, we got outplayed today.
Jerry, that's 3 losses in a row now at home. How concerned are you about that the home field advantage doesn't seem to be what it was?
Well, I'm not going to close the stadium if you're asking me that at all. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Price Check Sports Podcast, brought to you by the In the Zone Network, where we go city to city, state to state, worldwide. Just wrapped up week 3 in the NFL. A lot to go over. A lot of teams kind of starting to hit panic mode, while you still got a handful of teams that have yet to lose. So, jumping into it, Monday Night Football games that we watched last night. You got 2 teams, the Bengals and the Jaguars, who now fall to 0-3 after last night's results. Jaguars, of course, getting their doors blown off by the Buffalo Bills, 47-10 in Buffalo. And then, of course, you had the Bengals losing yet another home game in which they were favored here against the Washington Commanders last night. Jaden Daniels goes crazy, wins that game 38-33 for the Commanders. So, talk about teams that are starting to fall a little bit by the wayside here to start the season. Bengals, a team that, of course, anytime you have a healthy Joe Burrow, you have Super Bowl aspirations. Now starting off 0-3, they're just going to be clawing, trying to get into the playoffs. And then the Jaguars, on the other hand, we have to have a Trevor Lawrence conversation, right? Everybody who, was in the range of being able to draft Trevor Lawrence as it came down to the wire here a few seasons ago. You had teams, quote-unquote, tanking, that type of thing. Trevor Lawrence just has not lived up to the hype. We are now 50-plus games into his career. He has lost 8 straight starts. You also look at the stats of it. We kind of got it, a little thumbnail up here. He's basically Daniel Jones with better PR. It's the only way that we can put it. Fans are a little bit more in his corner. The media is a little bit more in his corner than the folks who root for Daniel Jones. But if you look at their stats, win-loss total, total yards, total turnovers, it's pretty much the same. And they just paid him over $250 million. So it's very, very ugly right now for the Jaguars, a team who I came into the season thinking that they could make the playoffs. There's no playoffs in their future. I'll put that on wax right now. We can stamp it, whatever you need to do. I don't see the playoffs in the Jaguars' future at this point. The Bengals, they've got a little bit of a tough road, but I do think there's still a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, given some of the games that they have coming up on their schedule. But right now, it's also, an uphill battle for them as well. Losing at home, you lost at home week 1 against the Patriots, a game that you were favored by, more than 6 points. Lost last night, a game that you were favored by more than 6 points. I know a lot of people probably feel like, well, the Bengals kind of got screwed over by the pass interference call in Kansas City. Get it. Totally understand it. Still doesn't explain the other 2 losses. Heavily favored in games that if you are a true Super Bowl contender in the way that you would like people to think, these are games that you should win in your own building. They unable to do so. Defense looks terrible right now. They can't stop the run to save their life. So it's real, real panic button time if you're the Bengals and the Jaguars. Speaking of panic buttons, press the button. What did my girl Soo Young say in Rush Hour?
Damn button. Press the goddamn button.
Or press the damn button. Press it right now. Don't move any second slower if you're the Dallas Cowboys, in addition to the Bengals and the Jaguars. Cowboys, of course, their defense went out and looked abysmal yet again on Sunday, losing against the Ravens. A game that, of course, we talked about last week was an absolute must-win game for the Ravens. They took care of business. But on the other side of this, Cowboys, talked about it all offseason. They didn't really make a whole lot of moves, and that lack of movement in the offseason is now showing itself as far as it's a lack of overall depth, a lack of overall talent on the roster here in the regular season. So definitely panic button time if you're the Cowboys, given how the Ravens just kind of ran up and down the field on them the entire game. Yes, they kind of made it close late in the fourth quarter, but again, it's a game where they were losing 21-3 at one point. So Ravens had a field day on them running the ball. the Cowboys are going to have a long season ahead of them. We'll get to them a little bit later because they have a must-win game they have to play here on Thursday Night Football. But we talked about the Bengals, talked about the Jaguars. Of course, we've now talked about the Cowboys. Two other teams that we want to press the panic button on right now. The Miami Dolphins. Of course, we knew coming into this week was going to be, again, an uphill battle for them. No Tua Tagovailoa. He's going to be out at least 4 weeks now, being put on IR with his concussion. Skylar Thompson goes into this game as a starter. He leaves, gets hurt. They're now down to the third-string quarterback. It's looking like a season from hell for them, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And even then, defensively, they haven't been the greatest team, on defense either. So, Dolphins is looking real bad for them. This is already a division that we thought was going to be a little bit tough for them to navigate, given the Bills, of course, being at the top of that division the last few years, and of course a Jets team that looks like they're on the rise a little bit. So it was already a tough division, and now going into week 4, you're 1-2, but also now no sense of light at the end of the tunnel as far as when Tua may come back, if he's able to come back at 100%. And in the meantime, what do you do at quarterback? So a lot of weapons, of course, on that offense, but it's going to be very difficult to get them the ball here in the next few weeks. And then the last team I want to add a panic button to, is a lot less panicky for them than it is some of these other teams, but San Francisco 49ers. Yes, they're without Christian McCaffrey. Yes, they were without Deebo Samuel, and then, of course, ended up being without George Kittle as well. But this was a team that was up pretty significant in that game, 14-0 against the Rams on the road. End up letting the Rams come back, win it 27-24. Brock Purdy now apparently has a back injury. Trent Williams left that game for a little bit on Sunday as well. Javon Hargrave looked like he's going to be out for the season now. So all these injuries start to pile up for San Francisco, and you start to wonder, okay, how do they overcome it? We don't know when Deebo is going to come back. The Kittle injury is a hamstring injury, so even when he does come back, he may not be back. And Christian McCaffrey, of course, he's on IR, but even when he comes out, of course, eligible after the 4-week timeline, we don't know when he's going to play, given that is now both a calf and Achilles injury. So I'm more so panicking because of the number of injuries versus what it's actually looked like on the field for the 49ers. But this is a team in the NFC West where these Seahawks, of course, are already 3-0. You have a Rams team that has the same record as you that now has beaten you, and then a Cardinals team that looks like they can stay in any game because of how their offense looks. So, going to be tough sledding for the 49ers. I do think out of all of these teams that we talked about panicking over, they're probably the one that is going to be able to overcome it, but not looking great if you're the 49ers at this point, given the injury. So, panic teams, we're pressing the button on them all day long. Now, of course, we still got 5 remaining unbeaten teams at the moment. In AFC, you have the Chiefs, Bills, and the Steelers. Shout out to the Pittsburgh Steelers for being 3-0. And in the NFC, you have the Vikings and Seahawks left unbeaten. So, of course, looking at how these teams have played over the course of the season here in the first 3 games, if I had to pick one of these teams that has been most impressive so far, to me, it's the Bills. And the reason for that is, you look at these last couple weeks, of course, week 1, they started out slow out of the gates against Arizona, but then ultimately came back and won that game 34-28. Blew the doors off of Miami in week 2. Blew the doors off of Jacksonville here this week. The Bills are a team that I feel like we all kind of underestimated coming into the season. But right now, not only are they winning the games that they're supposed to win, they're doing it in pretty big fashion. And really killing the teams that they feel like they are truly better than. Hasn't mattered who's been injured on the defensive side of the ball for them. Hasn't mattered who left in free agency over the offseason. Next man up has been a true mentality for them. They've got a tough game coming up that we'll get to here next week. But I think the Bills are legit. Again, I was a guy that doubted them. Hell, I fully admit I have a bet right now for them, San Francisco 49ers, and the Cleveland Browns all to miss the playoffs. And the Bills look like, at the very least, they're going to be the one team that X's out that faster than anybody. So, Bills, I think in the AFC, if you had to put a team right there with the Chiefs, I don't think, as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy, the Chiefs are going to be in the AFC Championship game. Call me crazy all you want to, but the man's been at AFC Championship game, I believe, 5 straight years now. He's going to the AFC title game. I think we get a Chiefs-Bills AFC title game if everything continues to go the way that it looks right now, because, again, the Bills look legit. And then NFC, I got to give some credit to the Vikings, man. I didn't think that they were going to have a chance this year with Sam Darnold at quarterback, and what do you know, he's leading the league in touchdown passes. So, hell of a job coaching that team by Kevin O'Connell right now. Darnold has played very, very well. Aaron Jones has had himself a hell of a first 3 weeks of the season. And then, of course, you got all-world wide receiver Justin Jefferson. You're going to be able to figure some things out offensively. Brian Flores, though, getting that defense together has been the real key to their success here to start this season, especially when you look at the teams they beat in the past 2 weeks. Beat the 49ers at home, beat the Texans at home. In that building, with it getting as loud as it does, that defense being able to keep the energy up, being able to put pressure on quarterbacks has been a night and day difference compared to what they had last season. So I like the Vikings in the NFC. I think, it's going to be a real dogfight with them, the Packers and the Lions in the NFC North right now. And a race that I think is going to come down to probably the last week of the season to see how those seeds play out in the playoffs. But I could realistically see NFC North now getting 3 legitimate playoff teams with the Vikings, Packers, and Lions. So, and of course, the Seahawks, while I do like what they've done to start the season, you can also chunk it up to schedule a little bit for them. Broncos, week 1, they got the Patriots last week, and then the Dolphins team with no Tua this week. We'll see. Of course, they got Monday Night Football coming up against the Lions here in week 4, which will be that first real test for them as far as another real contender. So we'll see how that one plays out. But of those 5 unbeaten teams, I think the 2 that I'm most impressed with right now would be the Bills and Vikings, just given everything that we thought about those teams coming into the season. Steelers, yes, but we know Mike Tomlin is elite as a coach. We know he's going to have a winning product on the field. We got a shout out, though, for somebody else when it comes to the Steelers a little bit in a second. So now we have to, of course, look ahead to week 4. We'll get to some bets here in a second, but also before we shift gears into week 4, a little bit of a new little segment that we'll have here. 3 shout outs for the week. 3 shout outs, whether it be players, coaches, teams, what have you. Gonna give 3 shout outs every week in the NFL. These 3 this week. First one, Justin Fields of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields, of course, was looking like an outcast going out of Chicago this past offseason. They gave up on him, thought he wasn't the franchise quarterback. You look up, he's got the Steelers at 3-0. He has played mistake-free football, which is the big key for him. And, while it hasn't looked great in some cases, he's also, again, he's not making mistakes. He's keeping the game simple, and he's also using his legs when it's most appropriate to do so. And you can see for the Steelers team, he's a night and day upgrade over what they had with guys like Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph in previous seasons. So shout out to Justin Fields for being 3-0, again, up there with Mahomes and Josh Allen as far as 3-0 teams in the AFC. So shout out to Justin Fields. Second shout out, another quarterback. We got Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, of course, named the starter after Bryce Young was benched in Carolina this past week. Came in and has the only 300-yard, 3-touchdown game of any quarterback in the NFL all season here against the Raiders on Sunday. And then, of course, he'll get a chance to play at home against his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals, next week. So shout out to Andy Dalton for putting up some stats that we haven't seen any other quarterback put up this season so far. And then last of our 3 shout-outs this week, Malik Neighbors. Gotta shout him out. He's so elite that he's making Daniel Jones look half decent. So, 2 crazy catches this past week. Of course, toe tap in the end zone for a touchdown here this week. But then also crazy sideline catch over a defender here to set up that touchdown against Cleveland. So, Giants get a much needed win. They, of course, we'll talk about them going up against the Cowboys here on Thursday Night Football this week. But Malik Neighbors, of course, our 3rd shout out for week 3. Now, week 4, of course, looking ahead. We got some pretty good games on the schedule as far as nationally televised games. Of course, we mentioned Thursday Night Football this week. You got Dallas Cowboys going against the New York Giants. NFC East showdown, of course. Absolute must-win game if you're the Cowboys. Absolutely. You cannot lose this game. You cannot have a halfway bad showing. You got to go in and you got to kick the Giants' ass, if we're being honest. You have to go in and do that up in the Meadowlands. So, if recent history tells us anything, this is probably going to be a blowout for the Cowboys, but with the way that defense has looked so far this year, you never know. This might be, one of those games that comes down to the wire. Of course, I don't really, if y'all notice here, I don't love betting Thursday night. We, of course, did it week one, given the matchup with Ravens and Chiefs. But Thursday night games are always a little bit tricky. Typically doesn't go as like high scoring as some of the other games of the week go. So stay away betting wise for me. But if I had to make a pick in that one, I think the Cowboys are desperate enough to get back to 500, get to 2-2, and get a big divisional win in New York on Thursday. Now, best Sunday game, in my opinion, Packers-Vikings. We talked about the Vikings being 3-0. The Packers now 2-1, getting two big wins with Malik Willis at quarterback. There is a chance Jordan Love is healthy for this game on Sunday. And, of course, if he is, it's going to make that a really must-watch game for everybody on Sunday in the early window. You also get an Aaron Jones revenge game. Aaron Jones, of course, we talked about him having a hell of a start to the season. He will now get to go to Green Bay, play against his former team for the first time. I anticipate a really, really good game from him stats-wise, so make sure to keep an eye out for his player props if you're looking to bet week 4. Definitely taking Aaron Jones over everything in that game. I think they're going to make sure to try to get him the ball to be able to get himself a Lambeau leap wearing Vikings colors. So Packers-Vikings, best game for me on the Sunday day window. And then Sunday Night Football, we got an absolutely amazing matchup. Ravens versus Bills in Baltimore. Can Buffalo stay unbeaten? Can the Ravens get back to 2-2, get to 500 a game that they really need to win if they want to try to keep pace with the Steelers in the AFC North? Ravens, they've looked good in a lot of parts of games this year, but to me, they've yet to put a full game together, and it's going to be very interesting to see if they can do that against Buffalo with the way they've been playing defense so far the first 3 games of the season. So, again, in that one, not really sure how to call a winner, but I will say Lamar Jackson rushing touchdown, Josh Allen rushing touchdown. Parlay is probably going to look pretty nice on that. Just go ahead and put that in for Sunday night as well. And then Monday Night Football, again, this week we got 2 games. Not really sure that we need 2 Monday Night Football games to start the season, or at least with the matchups the way they played out. But this upcoming week, you got Titans-Dolphins. Will Levis versus maybe Skylar Thompson or maybe Tim Boyle. I want no parts of that one. I don't want to pick a winner. I don't want to watch it. We're probably not going to watch it. We're going to look at and kind of tap in who we need to as far as some big plays happening, but don't love that matchup at all. Maybe the Dolphins pulled it out given how Will Levis has turned the ball over in recent weeks, but that's going to be an ugly one. First game of Monday Night Football. Second game, though, Seahawks and Lions, I think is going to be a great matchup. We mentioned Seahawks getting their first chance at a true contender, true quality team, I would say, to start this season. So that's going to be a test for them. Of course, they're coming into the game 3-0, Lions now 2-1. Who's going to prevail and kind of show themselves as one of those teams that can kind of stay at the top of the NFC for the remainder of the season? I'm going to take the Lions in that one. I think the Lions, of course, they're going to be able to run the ball. The offense looked a lot better this week against Arizona than it did the previous week against Tampa, but still a little bit slower for them as far as putting up points, but I think they're starting to put it together a little bit more than what we saw the first couple weeks. And again, I think the Seahawks team, they've been pretty good, but again, the level of competition has not been there, and I think that step up in the level of competition versus the Lions is going to be just a little bit much for them, at least to start the season. But I do think the Seahawks team is capable of making the playoffs. Just going to be a little bit of a tough matchup against that Detroit offense. So give me the Lions in that second Monday Night Football game. And, of course, talking about betting odds, props, things like that, we struck out this week on our parlay, all 3 of the Buccaneers, Browns, and 49ers. They all lose in the parlay. Saints also took an L in that one. Saints, we thought we were going to get a win and the over in that game. Turns out neither them or the Eagles really want to score many points. So we were left with not only a Saints loss, but also the under hits pretty big in that one. Over started at 49.5 and ended up going to 27 total points. So going back to the drawing board here on our picks, 1 parlay only. It's only 2 legs. Got to get back on track in this one. This week we're going total score or total points parlay. We're not touching the money lines, anything like that. But we got under 39.5 in the Steelers-Colts game. Colts playing at home against a very tough Steelers defense. We've seen that offense be a little bit inconsistent with Anthony Richardson at the helm. And then, of course, this Pittsburgh team, they just want to run the ball, want to keep the ball, ball control going. 17, 20 points could get that done for them. I don't see them giving up, another 20 themselves. So give me the under 39.5 Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. I'm going to parlay that with the over 50.5 for the Cardinals and Commanders. We just saw the Commanders put up 38 points here last night. This Arizona team does not play great defense, but they can also score the ball themselves. This Washington team just gave up 33 last night, even in the win. So I think when you combine the lack of defense for both of these teams with how fast these offenses can move, even when running the ball, I like the prospects of the over in that one. So over 50.5 for Arizona and Washington, under 39.5 for Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. Parlay 2 legs plus 272 odds on FanDuel as it stands currently. So that'll be our bet for this week. That'll also be our show for this week. So thank you again for everybody who has tuned in, liked, shared, subscribed. Make sure you continue to do so, both here on the Price Check YouTube channel. Also, make sure to show some love to us at the Real In The Zone Network channel as well. And until next week, guys, that has been the show. I am your host, Josh Price, again, Price Check. Checking out.